Hello, enumerators. Greetings from the United States. My name is James Harper. I have been helping to develop the data collection tools for the CLICR WASH program evaluation that you're going to be gathering data for. And I'm hoping that this video will help you to become better enumerators by highlighting a few tips and tricks that I think are really important when going out and gathering data from the field from our stakeholders and our users that we're interested in learning about. So in this video, I'll be walking you through a few tips and tricks about how to administer good stakeholder interviews. Then I'll talk through how to administer good focus groups, and then ending with household surveys and one final critical piece of information to really remember to make yourselves a really excellent enumerators out in the field in order to make sure that we gather the data that we need to evaluate this program effectively. Before I dive in, I really wanted to thank you for being part of this evaluation. What you do is invaluable. It's critical to understanding the outcomes of this program. So thank you for all of your expertise and being here with us on this project. So starting out with stakeholder interviews, the first tip is to prepare, over-prepare. Know that interview guide very, very well. Understanding what's in that interview guide will really help you during the interview process in order to draw out your interviewee, get them talking, and also kind of having that next question in mind before they finish what they're saying currently. Also understand our research goals and the program background. Understand what the program did and why. You don't obviously have to know every little detail about the program in order to administer an effective interview, but it's really good to know some of the basics about what the program did so that you can ask more detailed questions of your interviewee. Now, we've prepared a lot of questions, more than we think you'll need. So use those extras, those probing questions, only if you need to. Really focus on the big topics, get your interviewee talking, and go from there. Use your best judgment. Really be ready for various responses. If somebody says something interesting, ask them more about it. As long as it's following along the topics that we're trying to learn about, really encourage them to keep talking. That's one of your major jobs. And also really try to consider how to provoke their dialogue, how to get them talking, draw them out with lots of open-ended questions, if possible. Also, second big tip is know who you're interviewing. Are they a local government official that knows a lot about the local context, but not so much about the national? Or is it the opposite? Are they a national government person and they know a lot about the overarching policies or experiences in that realm? What's their area of expertise? A little bit of knowledge on your end can really help you direct the conversation to really get at the data that we need to evaluate this program effectively. Second, really make them feel comfortable. Getting people into a space that they're comfortable in will help them talk more openly. And this might be a little bit out of your control, but if you're in a loud environment or a cold environment, etc., or hot environment, try to make them feel more comfortable as much as possible. And along those similar lines, try to develop a rapport with them for a minute or two before really diving into the interview. Ask them how they're doing today, etc. All right, third big tip is ask open-ended questions to encourage engagement. I mentioned this a little bit before, but really specifically, don't ask leading questions, which can bias the results. So say, and then also not asking closed or vague questions. We've done a really good job to take this into account in the interview guide. So instead of rewording the questions as you see fit, we really strongly encourage you to read the interview guide, understand it well, and really understand the wording of those questions well to have that conversation in an unbiased way, in an open-ended way. And then you'll also notice in the interview guide, but I'm going to reiterate this here, record audio. We are going to be transcribing your interviews into text so that the conversations can be analyzed using qualitative methods. And this is a really cool way to do research. It really gets at a lot of the richness of a conversation and really helps us evaluate the program more effectively. So be sure that that audio device is working and that there's not a lot of background noise, etc. Okay, so those are kind of the big tips for interviewing stakeholders. Those one-on-one interviews are a wealth of information, but you have to do it appropriately. And I'm sure that you have experience doing this. I hope that those tips will kind of bring some things that are important back to the forefront of your mind. Moving on to focus groups, these are basically just large interviews with multiple people. So a lot of the tips that I've already talked about still apply, but you actually need to do more. It can be difficult to manage a lot of people and have these group discussions in an equitable way, making sure that each person has their say and one person in the group doesn't just dominate the conversation, right? So it's really important to draw out the quiet ones, okay? Be sure to ask people that aren't talking as much as other people so that you can get their input. Draw them out by encouraging them to talk. And maybe well, let's see, there's a lot of subconscious or unconscious body language that can be very important. So perhaps when you ask a new question, specifically looking at that person that's been a bit more quiet can really help them come out of their shell and talk during the conversation. And then also leave room for silence. When you ask a question, make sure that everybody can hear you, and then wait for someone in the group to respond. Kind of wait an uncomfortably long amount of time. Studies have shown that audiences tend to be able to last longer with silence than speakers do. And so if you can wait up to 10 seconds for people to actually respond to the question that you asked, you'll tend to draw them out more instead of you just kind of filling in the silence, if that makes sense. So leave room for silence and let people answer the question that you asked. Then lastly, household surveys. All the tips that I've already talked about still apply. Luckily, household surveys are a lot more prescriptive, right? They're typically a lot easier to administer than interviews and focus groups. But it's really important to kind of have these tips still in mind, trying to encourage people to talk, making them comfortable. All those things still really apply. The other really important thing with household surveys is that they can be really tiring to respondents because they're having to think consciously all the time about, okay, what question are you asking? And then what's my answer, right? So it's a very high cognitive load as opposed to an interview where there's one question asked and then they get to talk for 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's a very different type of thing. So in household surveys, really make sure that they're comfortable. If they're hungry, need something to drink, if they're hot or cold, are they sitting in a comfortable place? That really is kind of a really important thing with regard to household surveys. All right, so those are all the really big tips that I have for interviews, focus groups, and household surveys. Lastly, the most important thing that you can do to be a good enumerator to gather data is to practice. Reading the data collection tool that you're about to use, and then asking any questions that you may have about what does this question mean or what's the intention of this question in an interview setting. Make sure that you understand those data collection tools and read them and understand them on a really deep level before you go out and start gathering data. Hopefully we can do that through pilot testing and also just on your own self-study of the data collection tools. And then secondly, part of practice is role playing. I strongly encourage you to take the next hour or so to work with a fellow enumerator, where one of you acts as the interviewer and the other as the interviewee. Go through some questions, try to understand how it feels to ask questions and answer them, and then switch. It's a really valuable experience to get both sides for good perspective. Okay, I think that's enough of me talking. It's time for you all to dive into these data collection tools and get ready to go out and gather data. Again, thank you so much for being part of this program. You are invaluable to getting the data that we need in order to evaluate how effective the CLICR Watch program was. So thank you so much for your time and attention in this video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to East Meets West, of course, and I'm also at your disposal. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.